Nigeria's political parties are set to reap billions from candidates running for various positions across different levels of government. A conservative estimate from This Day newspaper revealed that the ruling All Progressive Congress Party is set to earn over 30 billion naira from the sale of nomination and expression of interest forms. Joining us to discuss these headlines is economist Gospel Obele, who's the founder of the Streetnomics Think Tank. Gospel, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. Electioneering and all the money flowing in and out for forms and so on. Can you think that can impact inflation?
Thank you, Rotis, for having me. It's a very interesting conversation. I think personally that electioneering will deepen demand pressure on the economy on a landslide. Activities are expected to also heighten, safety relocations are expected to happen, some form of uncertainties and planning for uncertainties will also happen. And economic stakeholders, or what we term as economics of elections, will begin to play in or unfold, as we get more into the electioneering process or season. So what I say is that all of these dynamics will intensify the demand side of things, and that would also put some pressure around foreign exchange or convertibility effects, as it were. And the downside is it's likely going to be more of a cost push, in my opinion, than a demand pull inflation.
Thanks, Gospel. So what you mentioned, what about the currency? There's, I guess, a debate, in some small circles about whether a demand for dollars for electioneering will weaken the currency or stockpiled dollars that are already been set up as part of acquiring a war chest flows into the system and supports the currency. How do you see that playing out?
So yes, I mean, when we talk about electioneering, there are many parts involved. There are many variables involved. Outside the core state actors who will be playing in that space will be the fact that so many economic agents will be demanding for dollars in the sense, for different reasons, as it were. But then again, that demand will also be further intensified by the politicians in the space within the period of time. And what that will lead to is some form of convertibility or exchange rate effects. And I see that tilting further a bit more into a cost push inflation on the economy, because that exchange impact will also lead to a rise in the cost of goods and services transitioning along the value chain, in terms of value chain transferred cost to the final consumer. And that may as well impact on prices, that may impact on how goods and services interact within the space and period in which we're in. So I see more from the context of demand pressure on the exchange rate may have some convertibility effect on cost push inflation across board for economic agents to a large extent.
All right, let's move to the telcos requesting higher fees for SMS calls data. Do they have a case in your view?
Well, the Convention of Telcos, in the real sense of things, the fact that poor economics for digital onboarding currently meets with the Commission of Digital Governance, as it were. The fees and the levies are more or less institutional-based, MDA focused, and all of that, and the cost of doing business as well as the current state of the economy. What we've seen is that all of these dynamics, being the fact that, it's actually solidifies the argument for poor economics, are meant to digital governance. As such, prices of cost of operating and cost of doing business in that space will keep intensifying, which would also lead to costs, transferred costs for the average consumer. So what we see now is not so much what was largely expected, because you cannot build or scale transformation or innovation, on the basis of poor economics, as it were. So a lot more has to be done in terms of going back to the basics of fixing the economics for digital onboarding. Until that is done, any form of governance, laid on top of all of that would lead to some form of high cost risk on the average consumer, who is already faced with some form of disposable and discretionary income challenge in the sense. So we're not surprised. The convention is how the NCC and other stakeholders would seek to collaborate more in dealing with this challenge and this narrative than trying to fix it at a standalone outside the poor economics construct.
And speaking of the economic construct, what do we make of price caps? I mean, we have that in fuel and so on. This is an obvious question, but are they market friendly?
I don't really think they're market friendly, because you talk about market friendly when you think of the demand and supply side finding an equilibrium price, just like talking about floating the naira in the sense. You don't have that because there's a supply challenge and demand is constantly increasing. So currently the prices are not price friendly. The prices are only responding to the actions of key state actors, or stakeholders who probably have their bias around how how the economy is responding and how prices are unfolding and how they are being treated in terms of regulations and all of that. So I think it has to do more around fixing the basis, which I talked about, the economic structure for digital onboarding and ensuring that all of these dynamics, when properly fixed, enabling the consumer to earn more in terms of disposable and discretionary income, when met with digital governance, can help us scale a more market-friendly or competitive pricing basis. But for now, it's hovering around more stakeholder actions, the state of the economy, and poor institutional regulations.
All right. So elections, telcos. Let's move to gas very quickly. LPG. I guess can we meet the potential with Nigeria being having the largest gas reserves on the continent?
Yes, I mean, there's a lot of potential. The conversation around, we've seen also that the market for gas consumption has also hiked. I mean, despite the fact that sub-Saharan Africa takes about just a percentage of global LPG consumption. But a lot more can be done because there is a rising awareness around clean energy and the need for gas consumption. There is also some form of advocacy for rechanneling gas flaring and all of that into core economic usage and all of that. But then again, all of these dynamics cannot happen except infrastructure is at the core, of ensuring that these things are much more scalable, for the average Nigerian and all of that. And except all of these things happen, we will continue to see an increase in gas prices on a month-on-month. It's quite contradictory on the fact that you're expecting a clear onboarding for clean energy and affordable energy, but that reality is met with increased hike in prices of gas over time. So I think a lot more around collaborative onboarding, to ensure that all of the actors are properly involved in the process of scaling effective solutions in this space, and the right infrastructure. I keep talking about poor economics. Without the right economics weaved into these key, social inclusion solutions, we may not be able to scale these solutions sustainably over a period of time. So when you look at it from an average Nigerian standpoint, again, when the prices increase, it hits the average Nigerian. And which technically we begin to talk about the conversations around the cost of living, low standard of living, and even the poverty traps we see today.
Excellent stuff. Just about 30 seconds. So are these headwinds surmountable?
Yes, they're surmountable. I think they're surmountable. I think it starts first from the culture and the ideology, the softer elements to a large extent. I mean, we need to begin to see ourselves as a people that can create solutions that can scale for the average Nigeria or to the last mile, as it were, and then begin to introduce the right political will, the right political interest beyond political correctness, and then invest the right necessary resources within the proper infrastructure, education, and all that is required, to scale these value chain of activities to deliver for the average Nigerian. Until that is done for a critical mass of Nigerians, I do not see how exactly these gas reforms or clean energy or affordable energy conversation will scale in the mid to long term.
Gospel Obele, always a pleasure. Economist, founder of Streetnomics Think Tank. Thank you so much.